I avoided every kind gesture from my wealthy childhood sweetheart. In my past life, he accused me of bullying his white moonlight, allowed delinquents to destroy my hands, which I used for painting, and watched indifferently as I drowned in the swimming pool. For 10 years. His expression was cold and detached. This is what you owed her. Yet in this life, he appeared at my doorstep on a stormy night, drenched to the bone, his voice trembling with grievance. Emily, did you forget you used to draw a portrait for me every year on my birthday? The summer cicadas buzzed incessantly. After PE class, Sarah Jo fainted from low blood sugar. Matthew Pierce was the first to rush over and carry her to the school nurse. When my best friend Lily Harper told me, she was furious. The classroom fell silent in an instant. Everyone knew Matthew and I had been together since kindergarten. Our families matched perfectly in status and appearance. We were a pair destined by the heavens. Seeing my indifference, Lily nearly exploded. Matthew despises transfer students from poor families. Doesn't he? Why would he carry her himself? I quietly looked down at my intact hands. Yes, I had once thought so too, until I died and realized we were living in a world crafted from the pages of a cliché romance novel. The heroine was none other than the poor girl, Sarah Jo. Her Prince Charming was my cold and aloof childhood sweetheart, Matthew. For her, he completely destroyed my dream of becoming an artist. Watched me drown without a shred of guilt. Also, their love could be cemented. My death became the catalyst for their emotional bond. The proud heroine finally broke down in tears, apologizing. It's all because I love you too much. Moved by her vulnerability, he helped her out of the shadows, and they lived happily ever after. Back in the classroom, Matthew reached out to me with a carton of orange juice. Emily, your favorite 100% orange juice. I bought it from the convenience store. Clenching my fists, I looked past him at Sarah Jo. She wore a second-hand school uniform and old sneakers, her high ponytail neatly tied. But in her hands was a box of handmade chocolates my mother had brought back from Europe. In my past life, I had been upset seeing those chocolates in Sarah's hands. Matthew hated sweets but specifically asked me for that box of chocolates. I thought he meant to give them to his snack-loving cousin. I never expected him to gift them to Sarah. Lily had stood up for me then, asking Matthew if he even knew the price of those chocolates. When she heard it was $100 a box, Sarah's eyes brimmed with tears as she self-righteously scolded me. Do you know how many kids in the mountains can't afford to go to school? You'd rather waste money overseas than donate to those in need? I'm so disappointed in you. I had laughed bitterly and retorted, if you're so noble, why did you eat more than half the box of chocolates you despised? She had run to the trash can, attempting to vomit them out, but Matthew grabbed her arm, his cold gaze sweeping across the room. That's enough. Sarah trembled like a frightened quail yet pretended to be brave and defiant. I was too foolish to realize that Matthew's words, cold and cutting, had been directed squarely at me. I truly was a naive and clumsy idiot. No thanks. I coldly rejected him. Matthew sighed, stepping closer to ruffle my hair. Are you mad because I took the poor transfer student to the nurse's office? I just thought she looked pitiful. Sarah's already pale face turned ashen. Her grip on the chocolates tightened as if she might crush them. Lily, unable to hold back, exclaimed, Emily, how did your mom's imported chocolates end up with her? Sarah froze for a moment, her expression defiant as before. Do you know what $100 means to kids in the mountains? How many of them can't go to school because of it? You'd rather waste it on a box of sweets than help others. Do you even have a heart? This time, Lily hadn't mentioned the price. But Sarah's identical words proved she had privately inquired about the chocolate's cost beforehand. Her usual pretense of cool indifference was merely a tactic to gain Matthew's attention. I remained expressionless, watching as Sarah stepped aside to drag the chubby boy, Daniel Lee, to the window. Take Daniel here. For example, do you know how hard he has to work to sit in the same classroom as you? I looked at Daniel, whose face flushed crimson. Daniel, how did you get into our school? His nervousness was palpable. Under my impatient gaze, he stammered. The Miller family's scholarship helped me pay the tuition. The Miller family. That was my family. In my past life, I had avoided mentioning my family's donations, fearing it would hurt the pride of students like Daniel. But he had fallen in love with Sarah, worked tirelessly to impress her, and even conspired with her to destroy my hands when she set her sights on Matthew. Smirking bitterly, I asked, "Daniel, my family pays for your tuition and living expenses and even found treatment for your mother. Do you think I'm qualified to eat high-end chocolates?" Daniel said nothing, but Sarah's eyes filled with tears, her face a mask of grievance. "Emily, if you're angry, take it out on me. Why bully a classmate instead?" I retorted coldly. "Daniel, stop pretending. If you're so virtuous, stop taking handouts from my family." Ignoring their excuses, I stormed out of the classroom. That afternoon, I skipped my art lesson. Lily was stunned. "Emily, isn't Matthew supposed to take you to class?" I didn't reply, silently pulling her into an empty classroom. Sarah was crying hysterically, hiccuping as she sobbed. "Matthew, if you hate me, just say it. But I have a sense of justice. Please tell your childhood friend to stop humiliating me by bullying poor students." Matthew, amused, wiped her tears with his thumb, then abruptly grabbed her chin and kissed her. "You're so bad," she whimpered, only to loop her slender arms around his neck. Lily gasped, covering her mouth to stifle a scream. "Oh my God, the poor transfer student has hooked up with Matthew Pierce. I grew up with him. How could he betray me so easily?" Watching my best friend, Lily Harper, stand up for me, warmth surged in my heart. If I were a mere side character doomed to be cast aside, then Lily was the loyal sidekick to that forgotten role. She couldn't stand the heroine, Sarah, stealing my childhood sweetheart, Matthew Pierce, and always made her hostility clear. Later, in the original timeline, she was dragged into an alley and killed by thugs. As we left the classroom, I turned to Lily, my tone serious. "Lily, I'm someone who can't stand dirt. Once something's tainted, I won't take it back. Stop going after them. It's not worth it and won't do you any good." Her expression turned confused. "Just let it go?" Of course not. Since I had been given a second chance, I was determined to change the fate of everyone in the story. The next morning, I didn't wait for Matthew to pick me up for school. When I arrived in the classroom, he was already there, placing a bottle of exclusive brand milk from his family's company on my desk. "Emily, why didn't you wait for me this morning?" Ignoring him, I stood and prepared to leave, but he grabbed my wrist before I could. My gaze drifted toward Sarah, who was casually drinking milk with a deliberately visible label that matched the bottle Matthew had just given me. Matthew frowned and explained in a hoarse voice, "I was worried she'd faint again from low blood sugar." "Don't misunderstand." I tried to pull away, but his grip was firm, unyielding. "Let go," I said sharply. His expression turned slightly stunned. He'd never heard me use such a stern tone before. "It's just milk. I won't bring it again," he muttered, sighing as if convinced I was throwing another tantrum over nothing. Sarah sidled over, her tone deliberately sweet and apologetic. "Matthew, is Emily upset because you gave me milk? I can apologize if it's my fault." Matthew's face darkened instantly. "Stay out of this," he snapped. However, as Sarah bit her lip and lowered her head in mock grievance, a fleeting trace of pity crossed his eyes. It was only then I realized how much I'd ignored before. During lunch, I escaped to the art studio on the rooftop. This private space had been built with funds donated by my family and set aside specifically for me. No one else was allowed inside. Yet, in the past timeline, Matthew had let Sarah vandalize my paints and tear my canvases to shreds. Even holding her in a passionate embrace in front of me, that memory burned like a brand. I pulled out a stack of preserved sketches, practice pieces I had drawn of Matthew over the years. I remembered him grasping my hand as I painted, his voice playful yet demanding. "Emily, you have to draw a portrait for me every year on my birthday." I'd agreed. From kindergarten stick figures to teenage sketches, I poured my heart into every single one. The better I got at capturing his likeness, the further he drifted from me. Now, one by one, I ripped them to pieces, watching his carefully drawn features shred and scatter. A fire burned in my chest as I destroyed the remnants of a past I no longer wanted. Suddenly, I heard a gasp from outside the door. Turning, I saw Sarah lurking there, her eyes sparkling with smug satisfaction as she watched me. I walked toward her step by step. In my last life, this was where she falsely accused me of pushing her down the stairs, which led to my fallout with Matthew. This time, I smiled coldly. You don't belong here. Get lost. Sarah glanced down the staircase and leaned closer, smirking provocatively. What's the matter, Emily? Just because you're richer and more talented than me, does that give you the right to look down on others? Believe it or not, I can tear you and Matthew apart using the simplest methods. She reached out as if to grab me, likely planning to create an angle that made it look like I was pushing her down the stairs on the security cameras. Fine, if that's what she wanted, I'd oblige. Without hesitation, I kicked her hard. She tumbled backward, her scream piercing through the campus as her body hit the steps with a sickening thud. Chaos erupted as Matthew rushed to the scene, finding Sarah sprawled at the bottom of the staircase. Blood poured from her forehead, and her leg twisted unnaturally. He scooped her up and ran to the nurse's office, panic etched across his face. When he returned to the classroom, his expression was icy. Emily, did you push Sarah down the stairs? The intensity of his gaze radiated fury, as though someone had hurt the most precious thing in his world. I kept my head down, calmly sketching on a piece of paper. He yanked me up by the collar. Emily, answer me. You think having money means you can bully others? The room went silent. My classmates stared in shock. Disbelief plastered across their faces. I shoved him away with all my strength, my voice cold and steady. You think I did it? Do you have proof? That moment, Sarah limped into the classroom, supported by Daniel Lee. Her forehead was bandaged, and her leg in a splint. She leaned against Matthew dramatically, her voice weak yet pointed. Emily, I only came to advise you against tearing up Matthew's portraits because it felt unlucky. Why would you push me down the stairs? She glanced at me with teary eyes, pretending to be a victim. Didn't you say you treasured everything in the art studio? There must be security cameras nearby. In the past, she had used silent footage from the cameras to frame me. No matter what I said, Matthew had believed her. This time, he immediately ordered someone to check. But the response came back quickly. The cameras aren't working. Sarah glared at me with hatred, clutching her bloody bandage. Emily, did you sabotage the cameras on purpose? I sneered. And what if I did? Let me give you some advice. Be prepared to take responsibility for your actions. If you want to frame me, make sure you have the weight to back it up. Matthew cut in, his voice harsh and final. Enough. I know Sarah would never hurt herself for no reason. His words stunned the entire room. Lily looked over at me, her face filled with concern. The old me would have been heartbroken. Now, I felt nothing but cold detachment. I felt sadness and heartbreak. But something had changed in me. I had awakened. I would no longer be a stepping stone for the male and female leads to strengthen their relationship. Sarah Jo tilted her head at a dramatic 45-degree angle, her face a picture of fragile despair as she fought to hold back tears. Limping, she made her way to the window, her eyes filled with defiance. I can prove my innocence with my life, she declared. Hearing this, Matthew Pierce froze for a moment, while Daniel Lee, ever the protective knight, flung himself toward the window, using his bulk to block her path. I let a faint smile curl my lips. The heroine loved to win sympathy by acting pitiable yet noble. But I wouldn't let her succeed this time. Matthew turned his deep gaze toward me, his voice calm but laced with warning. Emily, no one would gamble their life just to harm someone else. Admit it. And I won't press further. I only felt bitter irony at his words. In my past life, he had said he believed in me. Yet when it was just me and Sarah caught in the trap of those delinquents, he hadn't spared me a glance. Instead, he had carried her away, leaving me behind on that rainy night to have my fingers broken one by one. Even now, the memory of losing my ability to paint suffocated me. Noticing my tense expression, Matthew seemed to mistake it for reluctance to confess. His tone softened. Emily, Sarah isn't a petty person. If your family compensates her with $5 million, this will all be over. All eyes turned toward me, their expressions mixed. Some envious, some skeptical, all judging. Jealousy truly ruins a woman, someone whispered. I thought Emily was a well-mannered lady from a prestigious family. Turns out, She's capable of something like this. I still believe in Emily's character. Let's see how this plays out. That moment, the school administrators arrived. Alerted by the commotion, I reached into my pocket, pulling out a voice recorder, pressing play. I let Sarah's words from earlier fill the room. Emily, you think being richer and more talented gives you the right to look down on others? Believe it or not, I'll use the simplest methods to tear you and Matthew apart. Sarah's face turned pale with terror as everyone looked at her. Emily, how dare you set me up? She shouted, her voice shaky with desperation. Please, everyone, believe me. She really pushed me. The room erupted in murmurs. They say seeing is believing, but I prefer to do the opposite, I said coolly. Sarah's plan to frame me had failed miserably. Instead of ruining me, she had broken her own leg in the process. Meanwhile, Daniel, the self-styled protector, found his opportunity to play the devoted admirer. Every day, he rode his bicycle to and from the slums, escorting Sarah to and from school, even enduring the disdainful stares of our classmates. Matthew, realizing he had angered me, began showing up at my house with gifts, attempting to apologize. Emily, I was wrong. I shouldn't have doubted you. I even had someone abroad procure a painting by your favorite artist. Please, let me in. Each time, he was turned away. Our newly adopted wolf dogs would snarl and bark furiously at him through the gate. My mom, who had recently returned from a trip, couldn't stand to see the tension. Emily, children shouldn't hold grudges. Why don't you just talk things through with him? She suggested. But all I could picture was Matthew siding with Sarah in my past life, conspiring to bankrupt my family. That betrayal had led to my mother's heartbreak and eventual death. Clinging to her neck, I told her everything. How Matthew had defended Sarah, even showing her a photo of their kiss. My mother's face darkened immediately. It's a good thing I didn't agree when his mother tried to push for an engagement between you two, she said icily. I also revealed Daniel's devotion to Sarah and how, despite all we had done for his family, he had still chosen to hurt me. My mom had always been passionate about charity, even helping Daniel's late grandmother, whose cooking she had loved as a child. Yet Daniel's mother had feigned weakness to exploit us for more aid, even after her health had improved. Emergency aid is one thing, my mom muttered, but enabling this kind of behavior is another. She resolved to have Daniel's mother undergo a full medical examination, and if she was truly healthy, the support would end. For the first time in a long while, I felt a sense of relief. Taking the opportunity, I asked to start interning at our family company. My mom readily agreed, praising me for maturing. Suddenly, I remembered how, in my past life, Matthew had knelt before countless deities, begging them to bring me back to life. The memory made my nose sting, and I threw myself into my mother's warm embrace. The heroine's plot armor, however, remained formidable. While Sarah was at the hospital getting her wounds treated, she managed to save the principal's granddaughter from being kidnapped. Despite her injuries, she fought off the kidnappers, reopening her wounds in the process. The school held a ceremony to commend her bravery, calling her a role model for all students. Her reputation rebounded significantly. Some began to pity her, reasoning that ambition wasn't entirely a bad thing, and that not everyone was born into privilege. Rumors spread like wildfire. Did you hear about Matthew and Sarah at the skating rink? They were together for hours. If it weren't for him, do you think she'd have the courage to provoke Emily? Ignoring the gossip, I poured all my focus into my upcoming art competition. One afternoon, Matthew showed up at my studio with an expensive set of paints. Leaning in close, he begged, Emily, my darling, please don't stay mad at me. It was rare for the proud young master of the Pierce family to lower himself like this. I once would have traced his face with my fingertips, memorizing every feature. But now, I leaned away, my expression filled with disgust. Matthew's face darkened as he reached out, gripping my shoulders tightly. I only made one mistake, and it erased all the good I've ever done for you? I stood up abruptly, forcing Matthew Pierce to take a step back. Matthew, let's get one thing straight. Whenever you've done something good for me, I've always repaid you double. I took a deep breath, my voice steady but laced with bitterness. Your mom gave me a necklace, My mom returned the favor with a lavish gift. When your dad's company was in trouble, my dad didn't hesitate to step in with money and resources. And what about you? What have you done in return? Pulling out my phone, I projected a video onto the screen in front of the class. In the footage, Matthew was in my art studio, his arm around Sarah Jo's waist as he whispered into her ear, his lips brushing her earlobe. "You're such a good girl. So much easier to please than Emily." Sarah's face flushed red as she reached out to unbuckle her waistband. Leaning closer to him, the video cut off abruptly. The classroom fell into a stunned silence. No way. Matthew went that far? And in Emily's art studio? Gross. One classmate muttered. If I were Emily, I'd be furious for days. Matthew's fists clenched tightly, his face pale. Emily, do you have to make such a big deal out of this? I let out a cold laugh. Thanks to your girlfriend, I installed new security cameras in the art studio, complete with audio recording. Sarah, hiding behind Matthew, trembled but didn't dare speak. Matthew, however, pushed her away coldly, his eyes filled with anger and icy disdain. Emily, I won't let this go so easily. After school, Lily Harper insisted on taking me to a movie, saying it would help cleanse my eyes from the unpleasant events of the day. Emily, I just don't get it, she said, munching on popcorn. You're so outstanding, the perfect fiancé. How could Matthew even look at someone like Sarah? It's simple, I replied, a smirk playing on my lips. The male and female leads are destined to be together, and even without that connection, the thrill of the forbidden is a temptation no man can resist. In my past life, after my death, I had floated to the Pierce household, where I witnessed Matthew's mother smashing antique vases in a rage after discovering her husband's mistress. Matthew's response had been indifferent. Mom, as long as your position as the wife isn't threatened, it won't affect my inheritance. The callousness of both father and son was astounding. They shared the same unfaithful nature, yet neither could empathize with the pain they inflicted on their families. Then why does Matthew say he won't let you go? Lily asked. Does he still want to marry you? That's ridiculous. It's not about me, I said, shaking my head. The Pierce family isn't as powerful as mine. Matthew needs my family's support but can't resist Sarah's allure. He wants everything, but in the end, he'll ruin himself. The night before the art competition, my studio was vandalized. The piece I had worked on for 3 painstaking months was doused in ink, reduced to nothing but ruined paper. Coincidentally, the new security cameras had stopped working again. The classroom erupted in outrage. This is clearly revenge, one classmate whispered. Poor Emily. She lost her fiancé and her hard work in one go. Matthew said he wouldn't let go of Emily, but look at the kind of person he's grown up with. It must have been a mistake for their families to arrange their engagement. In my past life, the male and female leads had never faced such scorn. This time, everyone's suspicion immediately fell on Sarah. Matthew, however, remained in denial. He even accused me of fabricating everything to tarnish Sarah's reputation, when my hand had been broken in the past. He dismissed it as karma for my supposed lies. But this time, I wasn't going to suffer in silence. I told my parents everything Matthew and Sarah had done. My father responded decisively, cutting off all business ties with the Pierce family. Their company's stock plummeted, and Matthew's father furiously berated him. Now, with my artwork destroyed, the whispers in the class grew louder. Matthew began to look uneasy, sensing that my family might retaliate further. Sarah, however, refused to admit anything. It wasn't me, she protested. But the staircase incident, that was real. Emily pushed me, and you all saw it. Do you have any evidence? I asked coldly. Sarah threw herself into Matthew's arms, tears streaming down her face. Matthew, why don't you believe me? Emily pushed me down the stairs. I've told you so many times. To my surprise, as they embraced, I felt a pair of eyes staring at me from behind, filled with malice. The gaze vanished as quickly as it appeared, but it left me uneasy. After an advanced art class, I walked along a secluded path, only to realize someone was following me, quickened my pace. But before I could escape, a hand clamped over my mouth, dragging me into an alley. A man with yellow-dyed hair and a snake-shaped scar on his hand sneered. So, you're Emily. Fear surged as memories flooded back. He was the same man who had broken my fingers in my past life. My face betrayed none of my terror as I glared at him. Do you dare cross the Stone family? You'll be sewing your wounds shut for the rest of your life. The man chuckled darkly. Stone family? So what? You think money lets you trample over people's lives? I smirked, unshaken. Let me guess. Daniel Lee sent you. Funny timing. Just after I cut off his family's sponsorship. The man stiffened, but before he could respond, I yelled, Daniel, you admire Sarah Jo, but you're nothing more than a rat skulking in the shadows. What kind of man are you? A familiar figure stepped out from the darkness. It was Daniel, his face twisted in rage. Emily, if it weren't for you, Sarah wouldn't be misunderstood. Why didn't you clarify? Afraid Matthew would see through your petty schemes. Shut up, he snapped, his voice trembling. My mother's been sick and sleepless since you cut off her aid. Her cancer's come back. And it's all your fault. Is that so? I asked, my voice dripping with sarcasm. Funny how quick you are to blame me when you're the one who sent thugs to destroy my work and hack the security cameras. Too bad your love for Sarah makes you blind and reckless. Just as the man with the scar prepared to strike, bodyguards descended out of nowhere, kicking him hard enough to make him cough up blood. Daniel tried to run but was too slow, his bulk making him an easy target. I stretched out my leg, tripping him to the ground, then grabbed his collar and slapped him 10 times in quick succession. If you enjoy being a lapdog so much, let me beat you into a hot dog. I sneered. Daniel Lee, out of shape and untrained, was pinned down by 2 bodyguards who had rushed over. He could only lay there helplessly, his face swelling until he resembled a grotesque caricature. When Sarah Jo arrived, she froze in shock at the sight of her number 1 lackey, bloodied and battered. Emily, how could you be so ruthless? She gasped. You dared to have him destroy my hands and try to ruin my reputation. But I'm not allowed to fight back. I countered coldly. I didn't do anything, she protested. I didn't bother explaining further. Instead, I pulled out my recorder and pressed play. Sarah's delicate voice filled the air. Daniel, I've always admired your resilience. How you've stayed strong despite your poverty. But the Stone family has gone too far. First, they promised to sponsor your education through college. Then they went back on their word and even cut off your mother's medication. They deserve to pay for this. A gentleman must avenge his grievances. If you could teach Emily a lesson, it would help you vent your anger, wouldn't it? Daniel's voice followed, clearly moved by her words. You're right. That bitch has pushed me too far. If I don't take revenge, I'm a coward. The recording continued with their plans to destroy my hands and have Daniel's thug friends assault me. The memory of what almost happened in my past life flashed before me. How I had barely managed to bite the hand of the man who tried to violate me. This time, justice would be served. Sarah trembled with rage, her voice quivering. Emily, you've really developed a habit of carrying around a recorder, haven't you? I had no choice. I replied calmly. I crawled back from hell and won't let myself lose to the protagonist's crew again. Thankfully, this world has laws and police, with solid evidence. Most problems are cut in half. She stubbornly tried to deny it. The recording is fake. Matthew won't believe I instigated anything. I shrugged, casually pointing in another direction. Then explain it to him yourself. Matthew was standing not far away, his posture rigid, his expression unreadable. It was impossible to tell how much he had overheard, but it was clear he had been there for some time. Sarah let out a shriek and nearly fainted. Daniel and his accomplice, both of whom had recently turned 18, were sent to prison. However, Daniel refused to implicate Sarah, claiming he had acted alone out of a desire for revenge. Thanks to this, Sarah managed to escape punishment yet again. Under the principal's protection, she was allowed to remain at school. I sat at my desk, absent-mindedly doodling, reflecting on how strong the protagonist's halo truly was. Despite everything that had happened, she was like an unkillable cockroach. Still, not everything was a loss. At least Matthew had stopped tangling himself with her. He brought gifts and came to my house to propose again. His mother, Mrs. Pierce, wore a bright smile, her tone sweet as honey. Emily. Matthew was momentarily blinded by a vixen. But he's back on track now. Boys are naturally playful. But as long as his heart is with you, that's all that matters. My mother's face darkened with disapproval. She had always held high standards, expecting me to marry someone who could offer stability and respect, much like the relationship she had with my father. Mrs. Pierce. As women, we both know, when a cucumber rots, it can't be saved, she said icily. Mrs. Pierce's expression stiffened at the veiled insult. I've already reprimanded Matthew. He's promised me this will never happen again. Matthew knelt on one knee before me, his eyes filled with regret. Emily, it's all my fault. Please don't give up on me. I'll spend my whole life making it up to you. Please, just draw me a portrait for my birthday again, like you used to. I even salvaged the sketches you tore up. When I saw them, my heart ached so much. I realized what I had missed. I let out a cold laugh. Matthew, Mrs. Pierce, if your family wasn't facing another business crisis, would you have lowered yourselves to come here and beg for an alliance? Mrs. Pierce's face turned ashen, and Matthew's smile faded, replaced by a chilling gaze. Emily, no matter what I do, will you never forgive me? What a ridiculous question. I scoffed. Who would continue loving someone who's hurt them so deeply? If you had lived a life like mine, filled with betrayal and humiliation, you'd be 100 times more ruthless than me. After sending the Pierce family away, my mother hugged me tightly, a rare smile on her face. Emily, I'd rather you stay happy at home forever, living as a spoiled princess, than marry a scumbag like him, she said softly, her eyes filled with maternal love. Just as I was about to tease her, my mother suddenly clutched her chest, her eyes rolling back as she collapsed. Panic overtook me as I frantically dialed 911. Hours later, as I emerged from the ICU, the doctor told me my mother had slipped into a coma. They couldn't find any medical cause. Trembling with fear, I remembered a dream I had had before. After my death in the previous life, my mother had knelt before countless deities, praying desperately for my return. She had bowed 3,000 times, her forehead bleeding as she begged for a string of prayer beads, willing to exchange her own life for mine. The memory left me sobbing uncontrollably. Love and suffering intertwined, just like the rain that now drenched the earth. Love was fleeting, rain inevitable, but sweetness lingered as long as you remembered your way home. Ignoring the downpour, I ran to the most sacred temple in the city, praying fervently for my mother's recovery. Rain and tears soaked me completely as I knelt for what felt like an eternity. Finally, an elderly monk with a long white beard emerged, his voice calm yet solemn. Child, defying the will of heaven comes with a price. Unless you can overturn fate itself, the cost will be unbearable. I mulled over the master's words. Defying fate means changing everyone's ending. Had I managed to do that? The heroine, Sarajevo, now had a tarnished reputation but still sat comfortably in class, preparing for college entrance exams. The Pierce family, despite suffering setbacks, had found new business partners and temporarily averted their crisis. Even Daniel Lee and the thugs who once tried to destroy me had only failed in their plans and ended up in jail. When I arrived home, I found my father, freshly returned from overseas, sitting on the couch, looking lost and dejected. He and my mother had been childhood sweethearts, supporting each other through thick and thin. Her accident had left him completely disoriented, unable to focus on managing the company. I couldn't help but recall the past life, when Matthew Pierce had used their so-called brotherly bond to trap my father, bankrupting our family and seizing our assets. The Pierce family had risen to prominence on the ruins of the Stone family, laying the groundwork for Matthew's eventual title as the wealthiest man in a city. I stepped forward and held my father's hand. Dad, I want to start working at the company early. Emily, he said softly, your top priority right now should be your studies. I hesitated, then decided to be blunt. Dad, I overheard that Mr. Pierce intends to swallow up our company. He scoffed. Impossible. We grew up together and have supported each other through tough times. He wouldn't be that ungrateful. I took out the evidence I had collected, exposing Matthew's betrayal. No matter how close you are, a son's interests will always come before friendship. Matthew has hurt me countless times, and I doubt his father is any different. My father, a devoted husband and father, became visibly angry. Together, we went to his office. As we entered, I remembered the elaborate jade ornament sitting on the manager's desk, a gift from Mr. Pierce himself. He had insisted it remain in place, claiming it brought good luck. Feigning clumsiness, I accidentally knocked it over, revealing a hidden listening device inside. My father was stunned but didn't let his shock show. A sharp man, he decided not to alert them. Instead, he used the device to feed them false information, ensuring they would walk into a trap. It's strange, he mused. You fear your friends struggling, but you also fear them driving luxury cars. Reflecting on my previous life, I had realized how long Mr. Pierce had been envious of my father's success. Greed clouds judgment, I thought, watching my father skillfully manipulate the situation. He baited Mr. Pierce into thinking there was a lucrative opportunity, only for him to fall into a carefully laid trap. The Pierce family's wealth evaporated overnight. Despite our small victory, I didn't dare relax. Drawing from the memories I had as a ghost in my past life, I warned my father of upcoming financial events that could be exploited to further weaken the Pierce family. However, the stress took its toll. One day, as he listened intently to my warnings, his brow furrowed, and he coughed up blood. "Emily, how do you know all this?" he asked. His voice strained. Terrified, I wiped the blood from his lips and took a deep breath. "Dad, you might not believe me, but I've been reborn." I told him everything. How my mother had prayed for my return, sacrificing her life in exchange for mine. I told him how, in my previous life, he had knelt before countless deities, offering to give up 30 years of his life to protect my mother and me. First, he looked shocked but quickly understood. "So that's why," he murmured. He didn't fear death, but his calm acceptance scared me. "Dad, I can't lose you and Mom," I said, tears streaming down my face. "Emily," he replied gently, "as long as you can live a good life, I'd make the same choice again. That's what parents do. They love deeper than the ocean and higher than the mountains." Choking back my tears, I shared the monk's words about overturning fate. Maybe if we can truly change the course of destiny, there will be a way to save everything. He nodded solemnly, no longer doubting my predictions. Together, we restructured the company's strategy, planning a counterattack against the Pierce family. Just when everything seemed to be going smoothly, Matthew returned, reborn. Like me, he quickly noticed the differences in this timeline. The Stone family wasn't being trampled by the Pierces, and I was no longer the lovesick girl who once clung to him. It didn't take long for him to realize he wasn't the only one who had been given a second chance. I was captured. Matthew's gaze was no longer that of the clear-eyed boy I once knew. His expression was dark, his voice heavy with experience and bitterness. "Emily, your family's recent moves in the market, did you tip them off?" I met his cold stare without fear. "Why focus solely on the Pierces? The market is vast, but your family is the only one deserving of retribution." He grabbed my chin, his eyes filled with icy anger. "The Stones have launched relentless attacks on us, and now we're on the brink of collapse. Our properties are being repossessed, and we've lost all avenues of support. Do you think you've won?" "Emily," pressing a blade to my throat, he hissed, "if I kill you, everything will go back to the way it was." I laughed bitterly. "The way it was? Like when you ignored me as my hands were destroyed, or when you watched me drown without lifting a finger?" For a fleeting moment, guilt flashed across his face, but it vanished as quickly as it came. "You bullied Sarah first. I was just standing up for her," he said defensively. "Give it up, Matthew," I said, my voice steady. "I spent 7 years as a ghost by your side. I watched you marry Sarah, have children with her, and keep mistresses on the side. I saw her turn into a hysterical shell of herself while you only cared about yourself. The prince and princess living happily ever after? That's only the middle of the story, because hearts change. Marriage, to someone like you, is nothing but a grave for love." He let out a bitter laugh. "So what? Sarah lives off me. A woman's job is to be obedient. Then tell me, Matthew," I asked coolly, Was the reason you treated me well in the beginning because the Pierce family needed the Stone family's support? He paused for a moment. I once had real feelings for you, Matthew admitted. A little, but not much. When my own interests were at stake, I had no problem abandoning you. His gaze carried a fleeting pity as he continued. It's useless to say anything now. I'm the one destined to be the male lead. As long as things return to their rightful course, the Pierce family will rise again. I smiled faintly. What do you think? Do you really believe I'd let myself be captured and brought to your secret hideout so easily? This so-called hideout was in the woods, where Matthew and I used to play as kids. It was a small cave, a place we'd once cherished. He narrowed his eyes in suspicion, his gaze flitting to his phone. The moment he read something on the screen, his expression shifted to terror. A massive earthquake was about to strike the city, a disaster of unprecedented magnitude. In my past life, it had occurred not long after my death. Matthew, seeking solace, had taken Sarah Jo abroad, their protagonist Halo conveniently sparing them from the tragedy. But this time, fate wouldn't be so kind. Before Matthew could react, my bodyguards appeared, shoving him into the cave. Right on time, the earthquake struck. I had warned my father in advance, and using research from the Stone family's tech division, he had provided evidence to local authorities to issue early warnings to the public. Lives were saved, but for those who couldn't avoid it, the quake brought devastation. Matthew was crushed by falling rocks, his internal organs severely damaged. He was rushed to the hospital, clinging to life. Meanwhile, Sarah Jo, having just completed her college entrance exams, was struck by a newly installed chandelier in her home. The massive blood loss led to her death. At the hospital, I anxiously awaited news about my mother. The doctor emerged with a smile. Her condition has improved significantly. She'll wake up soon. Relieved, I visited Matthew in his hospital room. He was wrapped in bandages, looking like a frail mummy. Emily, he rasped weakly. We grew up together. Do you really have to drive me to this point? If fate allows only one protagonist, I hope it's me. I replied calmly. Because my life was given back to me by my parents' sacrifices, I won't let anyone destroy it. Matthew's parents appeared, their faces pale. Their family's bankruptcy left them overwhelmed by medical expenses. Faced with the choice of treating their son or preserving what little they had left, they chose to forego his treatment. As the heart monitor flatlined, Matthew's mother let out a piercing wail, collapsing onto his body. Seeing her husband's detached expression, she flew into a rage, clawing at him. You think you can just live peacefully with the child you had with your mistress? Let me tell you, without my son, I'll burn everything to the ground. Mad with grief, she set fire to the mistress's home, killing both the mistress and her child, before being sentenced to prison. With the loss of everything, Matthew's father descended into madness, the once proud Pierce family utterly destroyed. That night, I heard an electronic voice resonate around me. Supporting character successfully defied fate. From this moment forward, all the success, wealth, and status once belonging to the original protagonists will be doubled and bestowed upon you. As compensation, your parents' lives have been extended by 50 years. The voice faded as suddenly as it came. I rushed to take my parents to the hospital for a thorough checkup. The results were perfect. Both were in excellent health. My mother scolded me lightly. Emily, you've brought me to the hospital 10 times this month. Can we stop? I'm practically drowning in the smell of disinfectant. My father, understanding the truth, chuckled brightly. It's just her way of showing she cares. Dear. That day, I received a notification. My entry in the art competition had won first prize. The piece Daniel had destroyed had only been a replica. The real one had long since been submitted. Daniel and his accomplice, badly injured in the earthquake, now faced a life of suffering. Missing limbs and shattered dreams would ensure they never recovered. But I had no energy to spare for such irrelevant people. Instead, I spent my time with my parents, appreciating the painting together. The piece depicted a newborn gazing lovingly at their parents, radiating pure love and attachment. Emily, this is incredible, my father said. Our daughter is the best in the world. Listening to their praises, a warm smile spread across my face. Whether or not I ever made them proud, I knew they would always see me as their greatest treasure. Love is mutual. They had given me unyielding strength, and I would gladly be their shield for the rest of my life. The winter sun bathed us in its gentle warmth. As we leaned on one another, moving past the harshest of winters, I knew we would never look back.